All right, now it says go live. All right, I feel like I don't think I had to do all these things, but now it's acting like it's live. Oh, 7 concurrent viewers. All right, sorry, people on the stream. Although it's still fairly early on, I don't think you've missed too much. So what we've done is we started a new empty scene. We created a floor by creating a plane. We made sure that that floor is at 0, 0, 0 by using reset. We created a cube by using 3D object cube, and we reset it, and then we went to here as well. We did a scale of 1, 2, 1, and a position of 0, 1, 0 to have a character size reference. So this is an example of roughly what a human being might be, about a meter wide, a meter thick, and 2 meters tall. Obviously not Swedish, because Swedes are huge. And then we created a material. We created a materials folder by right-clicking here and doing create folder, and named that folder materials. And we right-clicked and did create material to create the floor. So now, hopefully, I know that's a lot to catch up on, but what I'm going to do is you can, if you're just if the stream is finally just working for you, what we can do is don't worry too much about the floor. We're going to move on to making the walls, and then you can catch up with the floor a little later. So, and now I know what to watch for when I'm setting this stream up. Hey, I'm still learning. So yeah, so we have a floor and a character size ref. And so what we want to do now is we want to set up snapping to make it easier to make the walls and the ceiling and the doorway. So you might remember from the first class that it's a little tricky how there's this this toolbar is a toolbar of toolbars that turns on other toolbars. Like this is how I turn on and off this gizmo. This is how I turn on and off a whole set of tools, most of which we don't really need now. These are important. These are the tools for moving, like rotating, scaling, etc. This is tool settings. We'll need that later for changing from global to local, like we did in the first class. And this one, grid and snap, is important because we're about to set up our grid and snap settings. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have, both the grid and snap turned on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple changes. So we're going to say this thing here, which is under tool settings, I believe. Let's see. Yep. So under tool settings, this is by default set to global. We're going to switch that to local. We showed you a little bit about that in the first class, but don't worry, we'll come back to it more and more. So you want this set to local. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure snapping's on and set to increments of 0.5. So right now, my snapping isn't turned on. I know it's turned on when I click it and I see it's blue. And then this is the increments. Right now it's set to 1, which means if I click on my character size reference and I drag it, it's going to snap in increments of 1. For what we're going to do, actually, it would be better if we change this to 0.5. And so that's snapping in smaller increments. You can see now it's a little bit more precise and easier to line up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see your, so here's your snapping right here. And then like your tool things are here. So yeah, yours are in different location, exactly. Well, the trick is you can drag these around. And so it can confuse you if your toolbars wind up popping up in a different place than me. So what we can do is we can get rid of some of this stuff that we're not actually using just to reduce the confusion. Let's see, I think that we need that one. We need that one. Let's see. And then this can be easier up there. So now you're closer to what you see for me. So you got this set to local already. That's good. But now what you want to do is you want to turn on snapping by clicking that, making it blue, and then make that 0.5. How are you doing, Martin?
Yes, 0.5.
So it looks like, excellent, yeah. So let's see, you have, so you're set to local, and that's good. But what we want to do is we want to turn on this one, grid and snap. That will allow us to snap. So you click here to turn snapping on and make that 0.5. And then when you move this around, it'll work a little better. So you try that. So try clicking here on that one with the magnet. That turns snapping on. Now change that to 0.5. Exactly. Now try dragging the blue thing around. So yeah, if you slide it left and right, you'll see that it starts to, you're a little off the grid. So what I would say is click the dot, dot, dot. If you find that you're transformed, hit reset. All right, and then take Y and make it 1. And actually we'll need to, no, the one for position above it. And then this Y for scale, you want to be 2. So one of the things you want to keep an eye on is that if you were already, if before you turn this on, if you were already kind of in between, when you turn snapping on, it will continue to be a little weird, a little off. You can actually just type in zeros for that. So now with snapping on in 0.5 increments, you can see I go from 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2. So that's how we're snapping to precise increments. And you're gonna find out that that's really useful. There's some things that can be confusing about it too. And so one of the other things you can note about this snapping thing that has the magnet is that it has this down arrow. And you can see that you can actually change the rotational snapping and the scale snapping as well. We're not going to do that, but just so that you know, we will come back to that and adjust some of the different types of snapping. All right, so now we're going to create a wall. So what you can do is you can go ahead and put your character size reference. It doesn't matter if your character size reference is kind of in a weird place. You want it kind of sitting on the ground within your floor. But what we're going to do now is we're going to create another cube. So here in the hierarchy, right click, click Create 3D Object, Cube. And let's name that Wall. Now, you'll see again that it created it kind of in a weird position. That's not the precise snapping kind of increments we want. So if we click dot, dot, dot and reset, it goes back to the center. And so you can see in the inspector, our transform is 0, 0, 0 position, 0, 0, 0 rotation, 1, 1, 1 scale. So that's fresh and clean. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the scale of this object to make it more like this, to make it a wall size, which will mean that it's going to wind up at a scale of 10, 4, 1. Now we can do that in 2 ways. We can either literally type in 10, 4, 1, or if I wanted to, I could use the scale tool. And you can see from this drop down that it should be scaling in increments of 1. I could pull this out until it gets to the edge, and that makes it 10. And I can pull it up until I get 4, 1. You can see that I wound up, previously it was 10 in the X, 4 in the 1, or 4 in the Y, 1 in the Z. As long as you get something that's the correct size, either one of those will work. Now the thing is, once you have something dragged out, the next time you snap it up, it's going to not be snapping in increments of 1. That's a little oddity about scaling with snapping. It scales based on your current size. So when it thinks of an increment of 1, it's going to double it to an increment of 2. Little confusing, I know. But like I would say, like if you have any problem here, you can just type in 10, 4, 1. Because that's basically, if you pivot around this, remember we talked about how in 3D, you really want to kind of look at all angles to see, we're like, okay, that's like as thick as a person. It's the width of our floor. So now if we just take and switch to our move tool and pull it up a few units until it's laying flat. So, for Jesse, for example, what I'm doing is I'm holding Alt and clicking left mouse button and drag to do this rotating around. So as a reminder, that's one of the ways that you can rotate around something is by holding down Alt and left clicking and dragging, and you get this eyeball. So now our wall is, essentially it's up and sitting on our floor, which is good. It's actually at a position of y = 2, but we need to move it so that it's over here on this edge. And I believe we're looking for a position of z = either 5 or -5. And that'll put it right here, kind of halfway over the edge of our floor. Anybody need any help with that? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it doesn't, we're going to be putting walls on 3 sides, not 4, because we want to create a door so you can get in. So essentially, this will give us one of our sides. Yeah. There isn't with, so that's something that's really easy. So Benjamin was asking, it's Benjamin, right? If there's a way to cut, a section out of another section to create a door. And that's something that you can do with something called BSP in Unreal. In Unity, we're going to use ProBuilder in the 3D modeling class next week. And it can do that, but it kind of crashes and it doesn't work particularly well. What we're going to do, the way we're going to do make a door is kind of the hard way of like actually building 3 different objects. So you have one wall. Now let's duplicate it to make an easy wall on the opposite side. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So your wall is at, so yours is at z =. Let me see. So I think what you need, let's see, if we go to here, your wall, oh, for one, your snapping's not on. So let's undo that. And let's see. So if we go up to there, so I think that that's closer to what you're looking for. And the reason why yours isn't, so you're at a position of z =, so your floor is slightly off, which is why your number's slightly off. If we make your floor, let's see, 0 here. Okay, so then this will go to 5 and be the wall that we're looking for. Wow. Mm-hmm. No problem. That's exactly why we're having class. How you doing, Martin? Oh, you're good.
This human, like.
Oh, you're human. Yeah, did you, let's see, your character size ref, is he in your wall? Oh, I think you turned your character size ref into a wall, which is actually okay. I'm going to help you real quick. So we're going to rename this to wall. And then we're going to take your character size ref. I'm going to reset his scale to 1, 2, 1. And we're going to put him back at 0, 0, 0. And move him up 1. So there you go. So no problem. So yeah, That's a totally understandable whoopsie. So what we want to do now is we have one wall and the other wall on the opposite side of it is going to be exactly the same. So rather than do this whole process again, what we can do is if we click on our wall in our hierarchy and then right click and click duplicate, it'll create a copy of it. Now it's sitting in exactly the same position, so you don't see it. But if we click one of our axes and drag it over to this other side, then we have a wall in the opposite side. And so you probably have one wall at like z equals 5 and the other at z equals -5 or something like that. But basically, you just want your wall to be opposite the one that you just copied. And we can do that again for our third wall. And if we drag that one into the middle, we're like, all right, well, this would be best if we just rotate it. This will work if we just rotate it 90 degrees. And this is where that rotational snapping comes in. You see, if I click this down arrow, it'll rotate in snapped increments of 15, which will work just fine. So we can click the rotate tool, which is right next to our move tool. We'll get this gizmo. And because we have snapping turned on, as we grab the green gizmo, you can see it starts to snap in 15-degree increments. And when you get to 90, you can also see it updating here in the transform as we drag it like that. So what you need to do is your duplicated wall, chances are it's wall 2, you use your green gizmo to rotate it until it's 90 degrees. If you have any problem, you can actually type 90 into that transform. So now we'll click the move gizmo, and we'll scoot this back here and put it roughly. It's going to be a little bit like, there's going to be a bit of a gap here that we're going to fix in a second, this corner here. But one of the things, so you'll see, well, actually, it looks like my Z got messed up because let's see. So my Z axis wound up being really weird, -8. How did it get like that? All right, well, I cleaned it up. So if you pan around the room that you're building, you should see something that looks roughly like this. And don't worry if it's imperfect, because we can totally fix it later too. So now, I'm going to show you a way to look at this thing from different views. Now we've used Alt and left mouse click to zoom around, but sometimes it can be easier to look at it from other perspectives. Let's see, so you see, if you don't have this gizmo here, then find it here. It says orientation in your toolbar of toolbars, and turn this on. So you'll see that here it's below the gizmo, it says persp, and that means perspective view. Perspective view is like when you're looking, down, and you can see, the horizon and things are diverging. You might have like 1-point perspective where all the lines seem to be coming together in a point in the distance, or 2-point perspective where they're going to 2 separate points. But if you click where it says persp, it'll switch. And now it says ISO. That's isometric view. You see now the lines go on perpendicular to each other or parallel forever. And so these are 2 different ways of looking at something that you can easily switch between. Perspective is how we normally see in the world, but isometric can be useful for lining up things. And when you're in isometric mode, you can actually click this gizmo to snap to different views, like looking down the right axis, looking down the front, This one, by clicking on Y, we can look at the top. So when we're in the top view, so if I'm rotating around, if I click on this green handle up here, it'll snap and you'll see it say top. So you can see if I switch to perspective, it looks like I'm looking down in the room. If I switch to isometric, now I can really see how things are lining up. I can see that, my walls are lined up with my floor. Yeah, there's this corner here, but it's roughly the same amount of space. We can work with that. So it can be really smart to switch your type of view and snap to your different views to look at things and line them up. You might recognize that this isometric view is a view that some games use for their game. Others use perspective view. So the reason why it's so easy to switch between the two is because they both come in handy. All right, so we've duplicated walls, we've rotated. Now we're going to create the front doors here. And what we're going to do, so, whether you prefer to be, you can actually change to whatever view, but what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this back wall and use it for the front, but we're going to adjust the size of it to make a door. So let's go ahead. When you have this wall selected, you can hit Control D, or just, for example, if I undo that, you can click on something, right click, and click duplicate, which you can see here is Control D. So now if I pull it forward, this is where it would be if we wanted our player to be trapped in a room and never escape. Of course, we don't want that. What we want to do is we want to create something that looks kind of like this so that the player can fit through in between them. Now, spoilers, that's going to be a scale of 4, 4, 1. But you can also feel this out by snap. Actually, now if we snap this, we'll see snapping doesn't work so well with scale, because it takes the current scale as the way it's going to snap, which is kind of weird to me, rather than snapping in increments. Yeah, Benjamin. Exactly. Yeah, and we'll show you that in a little bit. Which the way you do that, spoilers, is once we have our whole room built, you create a empty game object, and then you take your stuff and you drag it in there. But Benjamin's ahead, and I'm totally down with people like working at whatever their own pace is. But yeah, let's take the wall that we moved to the front and let's make it 4, 4, 1. So we can kind of think this out actually. If we know that this back wall has a X scale of 10, if we have a piece of the front that's 4, and then we duplicate it over here, that's another 4, that'll be 8, and that'll leave 2 in the middle. That seems like it could work. So we make our wall here in the front 4, 4, 1, and slide it over to the side here. If I pop into the top view and go isometric, you can see it looks like it's got that same amount of gap that these other corners do. And it kind of looks like our character size ref will fit. So I'm starting, because this is where that character size ref is coming in. You're like, wait, it's important that the player, represented by the character size ref, can get through this door. So now that we've created a 4, 4, 1 wall, what we can do is we can duplicate it and pull it the second part over here. Now let's take a look at that top view again. All right, I need to go a little further, one more step. So now is where I can see, okay, my character, who's 1 unit wide, has a half a unit of space on either side of them, so they're going to very easily fit through the door. But there's a piece missing at the top. We don't want there to be, most doors actually have a piece that goes across here, keeps the weather out, makes nice space for a door. So let's do that too. That'll kind of be the last of the walls. And after that, we'll take a break. So we have our two side walls. Now let's duplicate this one more time. And now we can kind of drag this over here and say, well, we know actually that this gap here is 2 meters wide, 2 units wide. So if I change this to 2, it turns out that'll fit right there in that gap. And then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to shrink the height so that it's not 4 units high like the walls are. What if I make this just 1? That could work. Can I pull this up to the top? Yeah. And so now I have a doorway. You know, you could say, well, let's see, is 2 too much? It kind of is. Yeah, it's going to take off the top of my head. So let's go with 1. So now you've got everything except a roof. So now let's do file save to make sure that we don't lose our work. And what we're going to do is we're going to take about a 5-minute break. If you need to catch up in that time, absolutely. If you have questions, you can paste them in the chat. Actually, the best thing is to paste questions into our Discord because it's easier for me to see that. And anybody in the room, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and I'll come by and help. Cool. So we'll take 5. Yeah, you got some stuff on the hang. You have wall 1, wall 2. Looks like your wall 2 is the same. So that's easy for. Let's see. So what you want to do first is take your wall 2 and drag it to the opposite side like that. Okay. Let's see. When you, I don't think you need to do that when you do a control Z. Go back to what it was. So go down in your floor. Is that weird place? Floor is at -3, which is a little. We'll put your floor. Because since we're working with the floor as like our base, it kind of makes everything in place. So let's see. Let's actually this. So starting from that point, see, duplicate this wall by right clicking and then drag it over to the opposite side. Okay. So click it over here. One. Right click on the wall. Then you click. There you go. Now you got wall 2. Drag the blue one. Exactly. Now go the other direction. There you go. Yeah, and this is exactly what we wanted. That's good. Now duplicate it again. Right click on the wall. not here. I think that you'd like to go for a second. Excellent. Although you're halfway there, you're negative 45. So go out to the green. Yeah, try just moving it left and right. Just right. And then that is also you can watch this here, or you can kind of eyeball where that is. And a little bit. Oh. You want it to be white or black. Yeah, it feels like you should go in a circle, but actually you just go left and right. But you got it. You got it right. So now switch that back to the blue. And then click on the blue and drag it down towards us. Perfect. Let's see. Actually, let's put this where it says C. Above. And then click. So it managed to get a little bit. Sometimes it can get a little off. So you just want to make sure you're on the round numbers. So now you got 3 walls. So you want to work on the front. Okay, so right click on wall. And create a blue and down. And go all the way to exactly. So now it's kind of hard to see. So you might want to rotate the view around. Remember how to rotate the view? Well, you can use that, or what you can do is pull down all this, and then use your mouse and left click and drag. Yeah, exactly. So keep moving your mouse this way, so you can see the front of it, which you can see right now. Now I'll take it a little down so you can see the lines up. And move it a little this way. There you go. Okay. Now put the blue to a little bit further. Push it that direction. Exactly. So this should be exactly 5. So let's just put that 5. Oh, what's one of that? Oh, yeah, that's good. So you see how we have it first? So if we look at, if we click this green thing, go ahead from the top, everything looks lined up, right? So that's super good. So now we click Alt, so we get that. Now you're going to want to shrink one of these down. And we said that like actually if we do 4, like 4. Yeah. There you go. So now we can drag that to the corner. That's like half of the blue. Yep. Now, right there and click the same wall. Now click the red and pull up. Don't sort of put that overlap there. Exactly. And then we would, yeah, and then we were going to put that top here. So right click and finish. Okay, and then let's make this too wide. And 1 high. Alright, and then try to pull it down. And pull it up until it's flush with those pieces. So I think you might be able to try rotating it around. And that's a whole hole. And if you so now we're looking around so we can see that we want to up on this. So let go of Alt. Click the green one and pull it up. Go. And then let's see, rotate around again. So we take it. So we see we probably want to go red back. see what it is. Pull it down one step. So it's this piece here. The upper step. There we go. Put it on that one. Now pull that down. There you go. Oh, I think we're a little too far. You want it to go toward the corner. So grab the right part. There you go.
Okay.
So I think you got it now.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. I'm gonna run to the rest of the
Yeah.
Yeah. And then press. It looks like something out of Mario. I like this cool. Jesse, how are you doing? Well, I think that it might be that your so yours isn't quite as you're just slightly off in some ways. Only by a smidge. It's really easy to just come a little off the grid when you're not exactly precise. Really close. So we're actually going to fix those gaps in a second. So that's. That's it. So just a little tiny bits off. It's exactly what you know.
There's no precise position to measure. I will be careful.
Oh,
We don't know when we did that.
Mm-hmm.
How can I measure like what you did? No,
So yeah, Christian, this the scene was created with a new project. It was using the let's see. What we do is at the beginning, we set this up with a new universal 3D project, which is just one of the built-in basic 3D kind of scenes. So when you create a new project here under projects, if you have either all or core selected, you'll see Universal 2D, Universal 3D. So Universal 3D is what we used. And then we talked a little bit about level design. And we'll get back to a little bit of that. So now that we have, let's see. So now we're basically here. All right, let's pick up where we left off. So you can see we have this, but we have these corners that aren't working out perfectly for us, but that's actually something that we'll fix right now. Let's see. We can actually use a cylinder that is 1 meter in diameter in order to make those corners look nice. So let's do that real quick. So here in our scene, in the hierarchy, right click and do 3D object cylinder. And so we can call this corner. And to make it the same height, let's see, these walls, they're let's see, this wall is a scale of 4 units tall in Y. So Y is our tall. So if we make our cylinder 4 units tall, actually the first thing I should have done is I should have reset it because it created it in a weird place. And that's just gonna make it weird. So yeah, make sure you reset your cylinder you just created so everything is zeroed out. And then we make Y4, which makes it quite huge. That's not at all what we want. I think we want more like 2, which is a little odd. You're like, wait a minute. Why is it that this thing is 2 units high in scale, whereas this is 4 units high in scale? And I don't have a good answer for you. But I do know that, okay, if we make our cylinder a scale of 2 high and drag it up, so that's 2 units up in the Y, if I look at it from the top, and here's where it makes it easy to position, I can either pull the red over and then the blue up, or I can just grab the square here and move it to the corner. So now if I rotate around, I can click off and zoom in. That actually fits really nicely. So again, you've got a corner that's a cylinder that's 1 to 1 in scale. You move it up in Y to where it's 2, and then you move it over into the corner. And because you have snapping on, it should snap neatly into this corner. How's it going, Martin? So let's see, so you want to create a cylinder now? Yeah. So click, right click here in the emptiness and then go to 3D object, cylinder. And then you can go ahead and name it corner. And then you want to make, when you click on it, we're going to make its height, the Y value, make that 2. And then 1, 2, 1, exactly. Now take it and drag it into one of these corners. And it should snap pretty nicely. And from here, we just know, okay, that works. Let's make 3 more. And so you can either right click on that and click duplicate, or you can see that you can use Control D. So if I click this and I really quickly go 1, 2, 3, Control D 3 times, they're all sitting on top of each other. But now, if I go into my top view, isometric view, I click this one and I drag it over here. I click this one, drag it down. I click this one and I can use this plane to drag it diagonally across. So now if I look at it, I've got a very modern, rounded corner looking house that lines up. noise. All right. And so that's all here in the presentation as well. So the next thing we're going to do is we might want to have another material for our walls. So, all right, looking good, Jesse. Looking good. Yeah, you got 2 of them. You just need 2 more. Oh wait, you have 1 somewhere, right? Is it there in the middle? Let's see. Now you have your floor selected. So click on that. Click on the first corner. That one's there. Click on the second corner. That one's there. Click on the third corner. Okay, that one you can drag over here. And then you just need to make 1 more. So you can either right-click on that and click duplicate. There you go. Now click on it and pull it down. Perfect. Now hold down Alt and left-click and drag in order to look all around. So that way, what we want to do is we want to spin it around, look at it from all sides to make sure everything's lining up, and sure enough, it is. All right. So now we're going to create another material for our walls. We've got a floor material, but our walls are pretty boring. So what we can do is if we look at our material here in the project window, you know how we duplicated our walls over here? We can do the same with materials in our project. We can right-click on floor and click, actually, it doesn't show you duplicate, but I'm pretty sure if I hit Control D, so it's kind of hidden. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, just create, if I were to delete this, I could right-click here and do Create Material. Either way, let's name it Wall. And then let's pick a color that's different. So I'm going to go for like a teal. Now, we've got a lot of walls and corners, and we want them all to be the same color. So we could drag this wall onto each of these, and that'll take a while. But instead, if we wanted to, we could select the first wall and hold Shift and select this corner. I think this will work. No. But what will work is if we assign them here. So the way that I did that, actually this teal is a terrible color because that's the color that you get when it's trying to build the, so I'm going to change that to red. So the way that I assigned a material to multiple things at once is I click the first one, and then I hold down Shift and I click the last one to select all of them. You know, this is the same if you're in Windows Explorer clicking on things like files. You can click on the first one, and then you can actually hold Control to click multiple, or you can click the first one and hold Shift to get all these. Now you would think you could just click and drag onto this, but it will only put it onto that one. But there is a method to do this. All right, when you have all these selected, it's actually showing you because they're all the same type of object that has the same components. The inspector here, you see it doesn't say, if I have just the wall selected, it'll say wall. But when I select multiple things, it shows you a dash there to say you're currently seeing multiple things. Under the mesh renderer component here, you can open up the material property, and that's where the material goes. Now, if I click and drag this and drop it into that field, it changes all of them at once. So that's an easy way to make a change to multiple things at once. You want to see that again? Yeah. All right, so I click on the wall, the first one. Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to select all of these. So you click the one at the top, then you hold Shift and click the one at the bottom. You got that? All right, so then if we look in the inspector, make sure you can open up the material section so you see the material. This is where the material goes in this thing. And then if I click my new material, and drag it into that spot and let go. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you need to make a material first. Let's see, how did, yeah, there was. I think that, so your floor material wound up here under floor. Although we want to put it under materials instead. So I'll drag it in there. And so then what I did was if you hit Control D, it'll, if it's selected and hit Control D, it'll duplicate. And then we'll name that wall. And hit Edit. Now click the green there. And change the color. You can probably just spin this wheel to give yourself a different color that's similar. Whatever you like. All right, and click the X to close this. So now you have a different material. Now click the wall, hold down Shift, and click the bottom corner. Now your char size ref is in there actually. Here's a trick. Hold down Control and click char size ref. So now the only thing you have selected are the things you want. You can already see your material. Drag that into here. There you go. All right. All right, so now we have a wall material that, and we have everything except for a ceiling. And so let's do that real quick. We've already put all this together and added our material here. We want to create a roof. So we're going to need one more cube. Let's right click, 3D Objects, Cube, and name it Roof. It's really useful to name things correctly and intelligently because the more objects you get, the more confusing it'll get. So you right clicked, click 3D Object Cube, and you named it Roof. Now remember, one of the first tricks, reset it because it may be in some weird position and we're using snapping, so it's important to be to be cleaned up. So we created here I'll go through it one more time. Right click, 3D Object Cube, name it Roof, and then immediately reset the transform so that it's in the middle and it's at 0, 0, 0. So now, because with our snapping on, we can kind of pull it up so we can see it a little better. Because it's still a cube, we can actually use the scale snapping to pull it out. Because remember, once we've made it a different dimension, scale snapping acts a little weird. But when it's at this when it's all at 1, 1, 1 scale, I can now kind of pull this out and it'll come out in increments of 1. Now when I rotate around that, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's going to fit right there. Of course, if I now do this, I can pull it out. So it looks like chances are something's a little weird because it's at 9, 1, 10. I get the feeling that 10, 1, 10 is what we're looking for. Well, we'll get 10, 1, 10, will get us a perfect fit here. Now we don't actually need that. We can either leave it kind of thick, push it down here. Actually, we can see it's a little jittery. I think that means we probably want it at 9, 9. Now you see 9, 1, 9 fits perfectly in there. Now here, I'm going to undo. Now you see this, as I move around here, you see that jittery look where the textures are flickering? That's something called Z-fighting, and it happens when textures overlap and they can't decide which one to render on top of the other. And that kind of is a hint that your geometry is intersecting. You can fix that, but actually what we want is a scale of 9, 1, 9. And that makes our roof fit perfectly. You could give it its own roof texture, or you could just drop on the red one. So now I can even, remember if I hold right mouse button, I get this kind of flying around as if I'm in first person control, where I can use WASD and holding the right mouse button. And I can kind of fly in and see what my building looks like. And I'm like, I'm kind of happy with that. That works. So now you got all your pieces. Yeah, Benjamin.
I want to turn it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's shearing for some reason. Well, I think that I bet I know what it is. If you click roof, so roof has its own scale and position and such, and so you're moving something. Yeah, try that now. Try to rotate it. Okay, so that was part. You had your cylinder as a child of another object, and sometimes they can act really weird. It might have also been set to global as well. So. What you have now is you have a whole lot of pieces. But what you want is, what if you wanted to move this house, if you were selecting stuff and only got some of the pieces, you might leave this thing, other pieces behind. We want to group all these pieces together. Now, the first thing I'm seeing is my directional light is right in the middle of my house, and that's just going to make things a little weird. I can also see that if I move it, I'm moving it in a local direction that way. If I wanted to pull it straight up, I could switch this to global and pull it straight up to get it out of the way. And that could. So the first thing we want to do is just get our directional light out of the way, because now we have everything here for our house. So now what we want to do is we want to group all these pieces together so that it's easy to move them around and it's easy to create duplicates of this house. So the way we do that is by making them children of an empty game object. And this is the way to do that. This is a very common way of grouping things together. So what we're going to do is we're going to create another object here in the hierarchy. Again, we're going to right click just as if we were creating a cube or something else, but this time we're going to create empty. We're going to create a game object that's just a container. So we click create empty, and let's name it house. And then just like everything else, it creates it at a slightly off position, and it's really smart to go ahead and reset that so it's at 0, 0, 0. So we have our empty game object. You can tell it's empty because it only has the transform component. And we named it house. If we were to move it around, of course, the house doesn't move with it yet. So what we can do now, we're going to select from our wall all the way down to the roof. We're going to select everything that goes into the house. And we're going to click and drag that on top of the house in the hierarchy, and you'll see now it's below. These are now children of house. I can even collapse this, and when I click on it, if I move house, I'm moving the whole thing. Oops, I forgot my floor. Well, actually, don't worry, it's easy to fix. I put it back from where it started, and I'll drag floor into house. So you can actually easily remove and add things to this group. So now when I move the house, everything moves together. Control Z to get back. Of course, I don't want my character size ref in my house. I don't need to. So your roof went down? All right, so I would say drag your roof back up. Or like click it and then grab the green one. There you go. Good. And then click and drag your red texture onto it. There you go. So now let's see. So I think you're good. Let's see. Oh, so you created your house, but you dropped it under your directional light. It actually, what you want to do is you want to pull this up so it's above directional light, because you don't want it to be a child of directional light.
How do I?
Click it and drag it with the left click. There you go. Oh, good. You did it. All right. Now click directional light. And what we want to do is here, let's switch this from local to global. So you see how now the green goes straight up? Now pull it up just to get it out of the way. There you go. Yeah, well, that's showing the direction of the rays, and that will be how it casts shadows. So now you have your house up there. That's just fine. Actually, one of the things you can do to organize, just grab your directional light and pull it up all the way to the top, just to put it at the top. So pull it above house. Yeah, not quite, just above house, but under where it says sample scene. There. Oh, that's okay. It dropped it all the way to the bottom, but that's no problem. So now click floor.
Right.
No, just a left click. And then hold down, let's see. We'll just hold down shift and then click roof. Now click control and click char size ref just to get rid of it. Now click where it says floor and drag up into house and let go.
Just click.
Click, move up to house and then let go. Perfect. So now if you click that arrow, collapses everything down. Now if you click house so that it's blue.
Left click.
So now you can drag it and make sure everything goes with it. There, exactly. Now Control Z. So you've made a house, but let's say that we want lots of houses. You could click this and right click and duplicate it and drag over here, and you could duplicate it and drag over here. You could do that. But let's say that we wanted to change something about that house. Let's say that I wanted to make the roof green instead. It only changed this one, and I would have to change all the roofs to do that. So there's a better way of doing that. Here, I'm going to Control Z to get back to where we started, and I'm going to Control C to get rid of these 2 extra houses. So there's something called a prefab. Prefabs allow us to create duplicates that are connected together. So any change to the prefab is a change that is applied to all of the different duplicates. And the way that we do this is by taking it and dragging it into a folder in our project. We use prefabs so often, it's a good idea to create a prefab folder. So just like we have a materials folder and a scenes folder and a settings folder, click Assets and right click and do Create Folder and name that folder Prefabs. So we're staying organized. So now you can either click the Prefabs folder here, or you can double click the one here. You can see that it's currently empty. And so what we do, in order to turn this house into a prefab, we're going to take the house here in the hierarchy, click and drag it into prefabs and let go. It appears there, and the house in the scene turns blue and has a different colored icon next to it. That is how you know it's a prefab. So now let's try this trick. If we take our house and then we right click and duplicate it, we could even do this multiple times. Now if we go to our prefab house down here, and let's make a change to it. We're going to make a change to the prefab, not to these instances in the hierarchy. And we do that by double clicking here on the prefab in this folder and it opens the prefab editor. You can tell that it's different because the scene here is blue, kind of like a blueprint. So now if you didn't see that, here I'll jump back here to show you. There's two ways you can get to this prefab editing mode. You can either, here in the project window, double click on the prefab, or here in the scene, you can see this arrow here. It works to do that as well. These are kind of the same. They do the same thing. You're editing the prefab at this point, and you can jump back to the scene. But let's double click on the prefab here in your project folder. Now let's just change anything. Like let's take the roof and let's move it down. And then if we jump back to our scene, all three of our prefabs that we did applied that change to the roof. So Danny asks, is that prefab editor color a preference or default? That is the default. When you double click here, this background becoming blue is the default color. But I do believe that you can customize it. You can customize a lot of these things if you go to Edit, Preferences. And I think that there's one of these things has to do with colors. I'm pretty sure it's probably in here somewhere, although I've never actually changed it myself. All right, so let's see. So you have a house. Let's see. So yeah, you have a house here. You double click it here. So if you click on your roof, and if you drag this down, this is just an example. And then if you jump back to the scene, it's made the change here. Oh, I think, well, you did create a duplicate, but it's sitting right on top of the other one.
Oh.
All right. So actually, you can say, well, Brian, it's not terribly useful to like just change the roof. But let's say, if we go back to our scene, and if we take the directional light and we bring down the intensity so it's kind of dark. So what I did was I reduced the intensity of the directional light so it's really low. And you'll see if I change this, you see that the scene itself gets darker. So let's do something that would make sense. Let's go into the prefab of our house and let's add a light on the inside. So here, under house, if I right click and go to light, point light. So a point light is like a light bulb. So what I did was I made a point light, and I want to make sure it's inside of my house. And you can control the intensity of the point light. You can control the color and the brightness and stuff like that. But the point is that now that I've added this light to my house, when I go out here, you can see the icon. There's lights in each of these houses. And you can see that you can kind of faintly see that there's a soft light here. Oh, I just did, so when I had one of these houses here in my scene, I just did the usual right click and click duplicate. Now when it duplicates, it's right on top of the other one. And so I drag it out. So I could do Control D, Control D. So now I have multiple houses. So now I think that we have enough time to bring in a first-person controller so that we can walk around in our scene. Oh, you added it while you weren't in the editing mode. So here, let's undo that. So what you want to do, so you added it in the scene, but what you want to do instead, I just put that inside the other one. Yeah. There we go. All right, so instead of doing it here, what you want to do is you want to double click here. And now you're in the prefab editing mode. Oh, I can see, yeah, Jesse's prefab editing mode isn't blue either. That's kind of weird.
That's why I wasn't so
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I'm
no.
the same.
So, but this is where you want to add that light. So if you do light, point light, and now you jump back out, you see it's in there. It should be in each of these actually. So it's in that one, and it's in that one. You can see this one much better. Well, one thing is I think you're upside down. So that's right side up. Although let's see, this one looks a little weird. Let's delete that and then duplicate that. There you go. So let's see. Let's see if we can get through this, because what would be cool, it's like, okay, well, we have a 3D scene, but like if I try to run the game, you know what you're going to see? A black screen, because there's no camera. Hey, nice. Let's see, delete this one. Did you add the light when you're in prefab editing mode? So that's what you want to do, is you want to, yeah, if you have to be in prefab editing mode for something to be added to the prefab and appear in the instances. So if you add a light here, you could add a light here, and you could try to drop it into one of these houses, and you'll see this little green thing, which is a way of saying, this is only in this instance, it's not part of the prefab. And you could actually make it, you could say, apply it to the prefab. That's a little bit advanced. What I recommend is that you make sure that you go into the prefab mode either by double clicking on the prefab or clicking this arrow next to this thing. And then, yeah, we noticed that I think both Danny and Jesse noticed that like when they went into this mode, it wasn't this blue, which is weird. Kind of nice. I have no idea why mine is different than yours, because this is actually literally the same, a fresh install of the editor. But let's see if we can get to this last part. So we did this, we did this, we did this. We discovered we have no camera. You could put a camera in there, but let's skip to this part. Unity will provide you with a free asset that you can use as a first-person controller. And this is, if you go to the Unity Asset Store and look for Starter Assets First Person, or if you just click this link in the thing that I provided in this thing. So the Unity Asset Store has lots of useful things that you can add to your project easily. And this first-person controller is a good example. You need to make sure that you're logged in. So when you go here, so you can go, for example, you could go to, Unity Asset Store. And you could go to, let's see. So when you go there, first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you sign in. It's the same Unity ID that you use for logging into your Unity Hub. So then if you search for Starter Assets First Person Character Controller, you should find something that looks like this. And you'll note it's free. So there's a third person one, and that's what we used previously. The first person one, the one we're going to use now. And Yep, starter assets, first person. So there's two of them. There's the third person one and there's first person. Uh-huh. And so if you click open in Unity, what it should do is it should open the package manager, which is how you bring things into Unity. It's an easy way to bring things into Unity. So once you click it, so you want to click import to project. This is totally normal, this warning. Just tell it install upgrade. Yeah, you may have to click add to assets first if you don't already have it. Then it will say open in Unity. So there's a couple things we need to actually fix up in order to make this work. Now, I think a couple of you might be falling behind at this point, but don't worry, I'll help you out. But since we only have 8 minutes, I'm gonna go through this to make sure that we get the everything into the stream and into the recorded video. All right, and so after it goes through that, you'll see this. This is telling you what it's going to import. And you could uncheck things you don't need, but just go ahead and import everything and click the import button. We're going to do this a lot. There's a lot of useful things that we're going to find on the Unity Asset Store that are free that we can bring into our projects. And so now it says it's in project, and I can close this window. So in my project now, you can see there's a new folder called Starter Assets. And so if I open this, I go to first person controller and I go to prefabs, there's multiple different prefabs here. The one that I want is nested parent unpack. If I drag nested parent unpack into my scene, then you can see there's like a capsule and a camera. But it tells you unpack for a reason. So it's a prefab. If we right click on it and click prefab unpack, then it'll unpack it, which just says stop it from being a prefab. And it will prevent you from making changes to that thing in case you ever want to use it again. Now there's a couple of things here we don't really need at all. We don't need this UI canvas thing or this UI event system, so we can go ahead and delete them. Now, there's one thing that I don't know why Unity doesn't just fix, but I'll show you there's something weird here. If we click on nested parent unpack, if we reset it, you'll see something's a bit weird. The parent itself is far away from the camera and the player capsule, which can make it really difficult to position this thing. You see how this is over here and this is over here? The parent is in a different location than the children. But we can fix this pretty easily. If we go ahead and take the parent, reset it so that the parent is at 0, 0, 0. If we select the first of the children, shift click, select the last of the children, and then click ... reset, now they're back here. And if I want to rename this to player, I can do that. And so the way it is now, there's the player. I'm going to just momentarily delete this. Let's see if this actually works. So what I've done is I've added a first-person controller to the game. And now if I look around, I'm moving that character. I can use WASD to walk around in the room I created. And then I can step out the front of the room and I can fall endlessly because there's no ground. So besides the fact that you need to create some ground to go here, you now have a level that you can work with. So there's more that I had hoped to go into, but let's just kind of like cover the rest of it really quickly while we have the opportunity. No, I don't need to edit the HTML. So there's here's the presentation here has got all this information about how you get to the asset store to download the first-person controller, going through the process to import it, pulling the nested parent into the scene, unpacking it, resetting it so that it works correctly, and then playing it. Note that if you didn't delete the main camera that was already in the scene, it might not work correctly. You need to make sure that's the only camera. So your sample scene should have just the player camera in your room and such. So we went through all this. We made prefabs of the room. We added the light to them. There's no ground, but you could get some prototype textures, which are also free from the Unity store, which are pretty cool to use for prototyping. I do recommend, we used a plane for the ground of the room. When you create the world ground, I really recommend you use a cube and not a plane. And it's because if you look at things from the side, a plane is invisible. You don't see it because it's zero thickness. There's no reason not to just use a cube. It makes it a lot easier to see your ground when you're looking at it from the side. Little pro tip there. If you drop one of these prototype materials on it, at first it won't be the correct scale. But if you look at the size of your ground, in this case my ground was 50 by 50. If you change the tiling of that texture, now each one of these grid spaces is going to correspond to 1 meter, 1 unit. It makes it easy to kind of figure out. So what I'd like you to try for the next class is to actually think of an environment that you would create, find some reference images. It doesn't have to be that you're going to create exactly what the reference is, but it just gives you an idea of like what you might be building. Create a very rough approximation. This can be an interior or an exterior. Decide where the player starts and where they should end, and then use color and light to help guide the player there, and use the character size reference for scale. So here's some examples of gray box levels. That's essentially what we're talking about. I know that we focused a lot on snapping and like prefabs and such. The intention was to get to this point, but I think that you can consider this the challenge for the next week, is essentially try to take it to the next level and build out a space. And if you wind up creating a mess, just throw it away and start over again. It'll take you a couple of times before you get used to it. You'll make little mistakes like forgetting to reset things or the snapping's off, or you forgot to look at it from a different direction. If you want to take it a step further, you can think about it with a little bit more depth. But essentially, my challenge to you is create a gray box level like this, take a screenshot and post it into the Class 2 Discord chat. Because I also think you should get used to sharing your work and in part to get feedback, and in part just to kind of feel comfortable that you're learning and sharing what you're learning and having the opportunity to get feedback from it is really valuable. And if you post something to the Discord, then what I'll do is I'll send you a direct message about what I liked and what I think you can improve. But of course, that's a totally optional challenge. It's up to you. There's also some cool pictures here of different level design. Also, there's a section here about getting assets that you can use. So if you want to dress up your things, there's different places you can get free assets, whether they're from websites under fair use, the Unity Asset Store, things that are in the public domain. A little explanation about Creative Commons and the types of licenses things can be available. It's important to understand if you can use something with permission or not. There's the Unity Asset Store. There's this person, Kenny Assets, who's made a bunch of 3D assets available for free. A great thing to keep an eye out for is these Humble Bundles. A lot of times you can get tons of assets for super cheap, like literally less than 20 euros or something. Like every once in a while I'll see one of these and I'll grab it, because when I go to a game jam, it's nice to have a bunch of assets that I can just use. I have a bunch of these Cinti assets that are really easy to use because they're low poly, and there's a variety of stuff. There's other websites you can go to. You can get sounds for free from this place called Free Sound if you want, for example, sound effects or music. There's a sound effect generating program called VFXR. In the next class, we're going to play around with a 3D modeling tool in Unity called ProBuilder. But also the question comes up, what about AI art? Well, the reality is that you can use it for a placeholder, but if you're going to release a game using AI art images that are generated from something like this, know that you don't own the copyright. It's entirely possible you could be using copyrighted images that you don't even realize. And the reality is that these things are scraped from the internet without people's permission. A lot of people see this really negatively. Games on Steam, you have to say if you used AI-generated art in your game. And when people discover that your game has AI-generated art, most of the time you get a ton of negative reviews. Unless your game is just super explicit, that's what I'm doing. So, this is really up to you, but, the perspective on the ethics of AI generation is everything in this spectrum from some people think any form of digital art is bad. Some people think you can do whatever you want, who cares? But there's an artist video here about where you draw the line when it comes to these kind of things. And I think it's good to educate about yourself about it. So yeah, that's it. People on the stream, sorry for the delay at the beginning. I think I figured out what I did wrong, so I'm going to try to do better next time. There's a couple of buttons I needed to push that I didn't push. So, but that's it. And I'll see you next week when we work on 3D modeling and texture inside of Unity using ProBuilder. Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.